always with the thought in mind that when we share, we multiply. And Patty McCord stands out as a living legend of building a culture of talent. Patty McCord served as Chief Talent Officer of Netflix for 14 years and helped to create the Netflix Cultural Deck. Since it was posted on the web, it has been viewed more than 17 million times. And Sheryl Sandberg, Chief Operating Officer of Facebook, has said that it is one of the most important documents ever to come out in Silicon Valley. Patty has participated also in Netflix IPO. She has also worked with the small companies and very large companies. She's a long-term veteran of Sun Microsystems, Borland, and Seagate Technologies. Patty currently advises a small group of companies and entrepreneurs in subjects like culture and leadership. She also speaks around the world, and in January 2018, she released her first new book, Powerful, Building a Culture of Freedom and Responsibility. Patty, we're very excited to have you here. Welcome to the stage. The stage is all yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Jorge. I'm really excited to be here too. And what a great roster of countries joining the call today. I think this is my most global cast ever. So what I thought I would do to get started is just walk you through a little bit of the framework of my thinking. But there's been so many great questions generated, and I know that a lot of you have other ones too. I really want to make this session a conversation between me and you and talk to you about the work that you're actually all doing out there. So Jorge, let's just get started with the first slide. I only have 3 of them. So if I can, is that up there so I can see it?
Sure, yes, let me just share it with you right moment.
Okay.
So this is it.
So I know what we're talking to here. Don't you love technology?
Yes.
So you can go ahead. So that's my Twitter handle if you guys want to tweet me. But basically what I want to talk to you about today is the idea that people walk in the door every day with power. So, you know, we have these words that we use. It's kind of flipping ahead, but we'll go back. We have these words that we use to talk about people that I don't think make a lot of sense. Like, I don't think that it's our job to empower anyone. It's our job to remove the obstacles in front of people so that they can really have the power that they already have to win and to have great organizations. So the first thing I like to talk about is the part about we're a team and not a family. And the thing about a team is that a team is a group of people that comes together to do one particular specific thing, to win, right? And if you think about when you come into work every morning, that however you get there, that all of those people that either came with you on the bus or in the train or in the car, however you got to work, they all came to work planning to leave the work at the end of the day, being proud of what they do, with. So basically what you want to start with is the assumption that these are trustworthy adults that you like to work with, that we can measure things by just using the metrics that are already in the business, and that we can, that the team, the way you organize a team is a way you can organize people too. And so the next part of what I usually talk about is the idea of talent. And when I think about talent, and I know that's what a lot of you care about, people say, oh, does she mean like only hire A players? Or are there only certain people that are the best people from certain companies to do our jobs? And how I think about it is using this, I call it my algorithm for success. And I use the word algorithm because I work with engineers all the time and they love mathematical formulas. So this is the same as a mathematical formula. And what it is a way to think about if you're in the right job or if you have the right people in the right job. And the algorithm is what you love to do, that you're extraordinarily good at doing, something we need someone to be great at. And once you have that combination of things together, so as an employer, the first thing you have to figure out is, what's the job? What do you need people to be great at? And how do you line up the right people with the right job? And recognize that putting together the talent that is great teams that do great work on time is the entire job of management. It's really nothing more than that. So once you start with your objective and where you're going and what you're attempting to do, then you're much more able to put the right people in there. Okay? So the last one is transformation. So if we can go to that slide. So what I mostly want to talk today is about when you think about your organization, it's really important that you not think about creating a culture that you can keep. The whole point of business is to constantly transform your business so that you're continuing to serve new customers, that you're continuing to do great work, and you're building an organization that is hungry for change, not scared of it. So when you think about designing for change, if you can go back one slide, I think, it's about clarity, right? So you want to be really clear and honest with people about where you're going and what you're doing and what success looks like. You want to be able to tell people the truth in whatever language you speak without any HR or management speak involved in it. And then you want to make sure that the people in your company are focused on reality and not fantasy. Really, who are our competitors? Really, what is the tough work we have to get done? Really, what's important and what's not important, so that you can line up the right people with the right jobs. And I would say, if I look back at all my management and working with people, the most important characteristic I look for in people is the ability to have great judgment. You know, just making the right call. It's not just being smart. It's not just having the skills. It's being able to make the right call at the right time so you make the right decisions. And that's how we wrap our organizations around the idea of transformation, which I think is the next slide, Jorge. And so that's mostly what I want to talk to you about. And I want to talk to you about the last slide here, which is, I think that we have an enormous amount of room to grow in terms of innovation in the way we manage people. And I want to start with the idea that it's not just about retention, and it's not about time to hire, and it's not about all of those metrics that we make up about managing people. It is about some of those things, but it's mostly about the metrics of the business. Is the right revenue coming in? Are we serving customers the way we need to serve them? Do we understand who our competition is? Are we creating organizations that can thrive on change and innovation? And then the last thing I want you to do is think about, and we'll talk about this as we go through the questions, the most important thing that you can do in your company to innovate around people is not necessarily creating something brand new. It might be just telling the truth about why we do things and choosing whether or not they're the right things to do. Right? So first you want to think about everything that you do inside your management practices. Why do you do them? What's the result? And is what you're doing achieving that result? And if it's and if it's just what everybody else does, stop calling it best practices. And if it doesn't work in your company, then consider just throwing it away. So sometimes the greatest innovative power that you can find in your own organization isn't to start doing something new, but it's to stop doing stuff that we know is kind of stupid. So that's my presentation part. Let's get to the questions. Are we ready for that, Jorge?
Yeah, let me focus in on this.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Perfect. So I would like so we have a lot of questions from the people. So we just sent some emails prior to this event so they can take fully advantage of this. So the first question that they ask us is, retention is becoming a priority in the challenges of human resources, especially when training investment is high. What are the companies around the world doing in this matter?
Well, to be honest with you, I think we should stop focusing on it as a metric, because here's how I think we retain great people. We give them challenging work, really smart people to work with, the skills and tools that they need in order to get it done, and set them free to accomplish stuff. And when we focus solely on retention as a metric, meaning I'm keeping you here, you know, it's kind of sounds like I'm keeping you here against your will, right?
Exactly.
I mean, and in English, I can't find any words that rhyme with retention that make any sense. You know, it's like, I've retained you. So you stayed here 8 years. You didn't do anything, but I retained you. So I think that it's a different metric. It's a different thing that we should focus on, which is when we see people that are unhappy, rather than trying to make them happy to retain them, we should get underneath what it is that's causing their unhappiness. That's why I invented my algorithm. Are they doing something that they can do it, but they don't love it and they're not that good at it? Is that making them unhappy? Or is it that they're trying their best and they're not good enough and we need somebody really great in that position, right? And that honest conversation about whether or not people are engaged in what they're doing, and I'm not talking about an engagement survey, I'm talking about, are you into it? Do you like it? Those are the conversations that drive retention.
Exactly.
Not foosball tables, not, you know, I work here in the Silicon Valley, the crazy stuff I see. Somebody told me one time, if we don't have as good a beer as the company down the street, people will leave. And I told her, if somebody's leaving for better beer, you might want to say goodbye.
Yes, exactly.
That might not be the person that you really want to strive to retain.
Exactly. That's a very good answers, Patty. So, I completely agree with your point of view. I mean, you cannot use those types of incentives to make people stay. I mean, because that's only short terms benefits for them, right?
Yes.
Perfect. And the other question would be, another question that we have from our audience is, how would you recommend to mix and balance the difference in ideas and performance of the Millennials and Gen X talent, so that we can increase communications and create greater performance for the organization?
Okay, so I'm going to replace a couple of those words because I don't like them very much. Let's talk about millennials. You mean people early in their career? All of us, no matter what age we were millennials once. And here's what people early in their career in their 20s want. Everything now.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, were you different when you were 24 than you are now? I'm assuming that you are, and I certainly was. And so I think if we stop labeling these generations and start saying, well, how far along are these people in their working life? And what are they knowing, and what are they accumulating, and what skills are they building, so that we can, as boomers or whatever other generation we are, say, oh, look, I'm going to help that person achieve a better judgment, be able to make better calls, because I'm going to share with them my experience and my wisdom. And I'm going to say to them, hey, you know, that may or may not be the right way to do things. Here's a couple of other ideas that you might want to try. And we are responsible for being perceived by those younger people earlier in their careers in our organizations as people that will lead them to success. Right? If you set up a me and them where they're our enemy, like, are they different than us? Of course. I mean, I tell some people sometimes, I'm like, see this thing right here?
Yes.
This is a computer. It's not a phone. I don't even know why we call it a phone, right? I can do the work that I used to only be able to do in my office, wherever I am, using this computer. Okay? So when you have a generation of people that come into the workplace holding their computer in their hand, who should be learning from who? Exactly. Right? And so I think those of us who've been around a long time, we're the ones that should be paying attention to the fact that if I can do banking on the phone, then why can't I get permission to do something if I need it on the phone? Right? Are we creating systems inside our companies that have the same ease of use as everything everybody else does? Like I got an interviewer called me and said, Are employers afraid their employees are going to go rogue and start complaining about sexual harassment on the internet? And I said, go rogue? Do you guys know that term? I don't know if it's a similar term, like they're going to go crazy. And I said, go use social media like we all do.
Yes.
Of course they are, right? And if they're going to say somebody sexually harassed me to a bunch of strangers on the internet, that's because there's no one in their company that they trusted to tell.
Exactly.
Right? So that's not, we should protect ourselves from those evil employees that are going to go to social media. We should create an organization where those employees feel like there's people that they can trust, that have their back, that they can talk to in the companies that we work at.
I completely agree with your point of view, Patty. So I see all the time articles out there in LinkedIn or posts that in which people is sharing that millennials are like this, Gen X are like this. I mean, and we cannot generalize. I mean,
no, like we aren't either. My son just turned 30. And I said, oh, gosh, are you a thirlenial now? Do I have to think of a whole new word for you? But, you know, he's a very different person than he was at 24.
Of course.
Right? He's getting married. He has a new job. He has a different home. I mean, and is he going to be a different person at 35? Yes. So I think it's important that we recognize where people are in their careers in our companies and recognize that they want different things at different times in their companies. So when all of the millennials start being parents, for example,
exactly,
then that's going to be a different dimension to how they think about work than you think about when all you care about is the next beer.
Exactly. Completely agree. Completely agree, Patty. The next question that we have is, what do you think are the right metrics for recruitment, considering that in many cases recruiters are mentioned like items on times to fill, cost, etc.?
Let me back up and tell you where I think you can get much, much better at recruitment. One, recruitment is everybody's job.
Okay.
Right? So every single hiring manager in the company is your number one recruiter because it's their job to build a great team. Okay? And the best way for that group of people, which is a recruiter and a manager paired up together to find other people to round out the team, is to have that be a true partnership and for their networks to be bound together. Right? So I tell managers, you should be recruiting all the time, like 24/7. When you're at a restaurant in the Bay Area, I always tease people that the best places to recruit are kids' soccer games, because if you're standing on the sideline at your kid's soccer game in the Silicon Valley, you know that other parent is working in technology. You might as well get to know them and recruit them, right? I mean, so the thing is, recruiters don't have any magic that hiring managers don't have. They just have the time and they have the focus. So recruiters need to really, really dive into the teams that they're building and the work that they're doing. So an example is I did a talk last week with about 500 staffing people in the room, and all of them were hiring for technical talent. They were all hiring engineers. And I said, raise your hand if you've ever sat next to an engineer while they're writing code.
Okay.
No one did, right?
Yes.
So how are you supposed to know what motivates these people when you don't actually know what they do? So the number one thing you can do as a recruiter is get inside of the talent that you already have in your organization. You should spend time in the teams that you're in if you can. You should sit down next to them. You should look and talk to the people who are really successful. And then what you do as a recruiter is you bring in the expertise to manage the process, to make it disciplined, to make sure that people are asking good questions, to make sure that you're following up at the end of the interview, that you teach people how to do good interviews, that you know, because the object of recruitment is to find out if this person can do this job. It's not to hire 10 more engineers.
Exactly.
Right? So so I think how we should measure ourselves is we should know when we walk in, if we put the right person in the job, 6 months from their start date, what does success look like? right?
Exactly.
So if we knew, and then if we measured, like we go back at 6 months in to everybody that we've placed and say, how are they doing on a scale of 1 to 5, and thinking about what we knew when we hired them, that's a way better metric than time to hire. Because just because you hire the wrong person fast doesn't do you any good. Right?
Yes.
And for us to have realistic dialogues with the hiring managers that we're working with, saying, wow, that's a really rare skill and not very many people know how to do that. I'm not going to be able to find that. It's unlikely I'll find that person myself in a month. If we do it together, I think we could do it. Right? But there's, here's the typical candidate flow for a skill set like this. And that's the other thing. We should have the metrics to say, we're going to have to talk to 300 people, right?
Exactly, yes.
To find the 42 that might be qualified. And then we have to find the 10 that are qualified and interested in our company and the work that we're doing. And then we have to thoroughly vet to make sure that they're the right people to do that. But don't worry, I've got a system to help you figure that out. That's where we add value.
Exactly. And I completely agree with your point of view. I mean, because in many cases, for example, at least in the case of Mexico, a lot of people, it's saying that when they have to recruit someone, they always say, yes, yes, yes. I mean, you're paying this amount of money, but you want this amount of expertise.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the people always say, yes, yes. And that would be one part. And the other part would be like, I completely agree with you in which the hiring manager needs to look up into the future. Always being just in front of them, just like, okay, I need this guy with 10 years of experience in this area. That's it.
Well, and typically I've done this my whole life. Let's be clear about how positions descriptions get written. Okay. A job requisition. Okay. A job requisition either describes the person who just left that you wished hadn't gone, or it describes a fantasy person that does not exist on the planet, or it describes whatever it takes to get that requisition approved. Okay. None of those have anything to do with
Exactly.
the right person, right? So if we start with the right person, and then you just said something that I think is a hugely valuable contribution that we can make to our companies that we don't. We have data, right? We can say, hey, by the way, you're not going to get an A player with that particular skill set for this amount of money. That's not what the market's paying. Okay,
Exactly.
Let me give you some information on 5 other people I've put in positions like that in 5 other companies and what their salary data is. So we either need to compromise on the compensation, or we need to compromise on what the skill set is, because I can find you either one of them, but I can't find both, right? Because that's sort of leading me to another one of my thinking and my theories, which is pay is market-based. Right? So when you decide what your problem is, what your time frame is, and what you can afford, then be realistic about who you're going to go hire. But I do the same thing with when I talk to people about compensation. I talked to an HR manager of a startup, and she said, we've chosen to pay in the 65th percentile, right? And I said to her, can I be one of your employees? And she said, sure. And I said, who gets the other 35%? And she said, well, that's not what percentile means. And I said, well, I know that. You know that. And no one else on the planet knows that.
Exactly.
Okay. And by the way, you can't say A player and 65th percentile in the same sentence and have it be true, because A players work for 100 percentile.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
so but we have that information in our staffing organizations, and that can bring us a lot of power and a lot of influence in the organization, because that's how you get respect, not just for filling positions, but for saying, well, let me share with you my expertise about these kinds of people and these kinds of job and this kind of supply and this kind of demand. And here's our methodology, and here's the time frame associate, the funnel that I just described to you.
Exactly.
Okay, well, since we don't know anybody in our network knows how to do that, we're going to have to talk to 300 people.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Awesome. We have another question that it says that, what is your recommendation on giving feedback other than continuously? I mean, how do you give proper feedback?
Well, one of the problems with the word feedback is that it's now associated with another phrase that we use called constructive criticism, which then people translate into saying mean things in a nice way.
Okay.
And so let's step back and talk about effective feedback. Okay. If I say, Jorge, damn it, you did it again, that bad thing that I told you not to do. We've talked about it before. Remember last year at your annual performance review? Well, it's a year later and you're still doing that. That's a bad thing. Don't do it anymore. And the next time you do it, which you probably will, you'll feel bad. Okay.
Exactly.
So that's a form of feedback that's not particularly effective because we've gone 2 years now and you haven't changed your behavior. It would be so much more effective if I said in a meeting where you spoke up and you had an opinion and you had a solution, if I looked at you and I said, that, my friend, that's what we're talking about. What you just did right now, right? That's what I'm looking for here. And you will go do that 5 times today because it feels good. So remember that feedback is also giving people recognition and, pats on the back and rewards in the moment for the things that they do right, because we humans are actually more motivated that way. Now, if you can give, the other part about feedback often is when you have to tell somebody something that you think might hurt their feelings and you want to say it in a nice way. So I've found that the nicest way to say things that might be difficult is just to tell the truth.
Okay.
Okay. Which might mean, hey, you have worked for the last 5 years to build this part of our technology, and it is amazing. We would not be here today if it wasn't for you. You've built an incredible thing, and it's built now, and we don't need to build on it anymore. We need to actually maintain it. And instead of creating great new features, we actually need it to run extraordinarily efficiently. We need somebody who loves that detail, and that's not you. Right? And so when I look into the future of the team that we're going to build, I got to tell you, if you came in the door right now, I'm not sure I would hire you for this new team. I would hire you for that one, but not this one. And you can feel bad about that, but then we can start having a conversation that's really effective. So where else in the company is there a place that we're building stuff that you'd be really effective at, right? And if there isn't any place, then where else, what other company would be a great place for you to go to, having learned what you've figured out here? So back to your question about retention, what if instead of retaining people, we said our job is to create teams where people do incredible work and a company that they're proud to be from,
okay.
Right? So that you're creating situations where you say, wow, we finished that. That was so great. I can't wait to go, solve this problem for somebody else, and that be okay. Right? Because if we're realistic, especially those of us who are in recruiting and we get deep inside of it, we're going to say, oh, I'd never go hire that guy for that. Exactly. And so that honest conversation, that's great feedback. And the next part is great feedback is really effective when we do it in the moment.
And you touch a very interesting point, Patty, here. Basically, what you said, it's like when it is better to work with people in which they are truly passionate and they are truly successful. And I need, as a manager or an organization, to be completely aware that my company is evolving because it's living in the market.
Yeah, and so are our people. Look at the conversation we just had about millennials.
Yes.
Right. I mean, so there's all of those dimensions. And, people ask me all the time, how do you create a great culture and how do you keep it? And the answer is you can't keep it. you can't, right? If you keep it, then you won't be successful. You don't want to do tomorrow the way you do things today. There are certain things that you want to keep that are behaviors and values that you always want to stay constant, but the way you operate is going to change all the time. And so we want to, I think it's healthier to just keep us learning and moving forward.
Exactly. Completely agree with you, Patty. So we have another question that it says, in our current economy in Mexico, we have internal and external challenges. The income of employees is less every day, and in most of the causes of turnover is wish to get better in salary. What can we do better from an HR perspective to reduce this KPI, in addition to improve the employee opinion, engagement, integration events, and training?
Well, that's a big question. So let me go back and take some parts of it. You have to be realistic about pay. Okay. So, but I want you to step back and think about pay the same way you think about any other trade-off that you make in your business, right? So I'll give you an example. I went to a startup. It's a different kind of example, but you can flip it back. Went to a startup where I met with the CEO, and they had just gotten a new round of funding. And so he said to me, I need to talk to you because we're going to go from 150 people on this team to 300 people on this team. And I think it's going to be crazy. And I want you to tell me how to do that. And I said, what's the magic of 300? You think you're going to get twice as much work done? And he said, yeah, we're going to have twice as many people get twice as much work done. And I said, well, that's not true. You'll get half as much work done because you're going to hire another 150 people who are just like this 150 people, and nobody knows what they're doing, and you're going to be at scale, and there's nobody to be in charge. And so actually you'll get less done.
Exactly.
So what problem are you trying to solve? And it turned out that he was solving a problem of scale, right? So I said, and you're solving that problem because nobody here knows how to do that. Nobody here has worked in a company that's bigger. Maybe you should consider, rather than hiring another 150 people, hiring 70 at twice as much salary. Or, is the problem that you have to hire 50 more customer service people because the product doesn't work? Maybe instead of hiring 50 more people to answer the phone to try and help customers get around the problem of the product not working, it might be more advantageous to hire a very, very expensive team of people, maybe as contractors for some short period of time to fix the bugs.
Exactly.
Right. So that's where we have to come in as coaches and experts in our organization to say, okay, what's the bucket of money we have to spend, right? How much can we spend, and what are we trying to accomplish? Okay, so what are the trade-offs of what we can get for spending this amount of money? So if you are paying people hourly and they're going to leave you for another, 100 pesos an hour, then you're in that kind of war, and people are just going to move a lot.
Okay.
Right. So, but it's about being smart and thoughtful about your whole bucket of compensation, and then turn it into wages, not fight, peso for peso against each other with hourly wages, because you're just going to drive it up. Wouldn't you leave for more money if that's right? I mean, the other thing is we've got to start putting ourselves in the shoes of our employees.
Of course.
Right.
Well, and that leaves us with the thought that you already mentioned, it, which, why does an A player would be interested in this low level pay?
Well, they won't, and they shouldn't have to. But there's the notion of A players is also a little false, right?
Yes.
Which is my A player might be your C player. Right. I spend a lot of my time now with Netflix alumni, with people who have worked there. And it's just I'm so proud of the things that people have gone off to do. And some of them have gone off to do other things because what we hired them to do at Netflix, they finished doing. Right. just didn't need them to do it anymore. But they've leveraged those experiences to do incredible things at other companies. So again, it's about matching, what's the problem we're trying to solve and who's the best person to solve it. And an A player senior person isn't the right person to solve every problem. Let's go back to the good side of millennials, right? Here's the great thing about being early in your career. You don't know the answer no. You think you can do anything, right?
Yes.
And that's an incredible spirit that, after a while, we kind of say no more than we say yes. Well, we tried that. It didn't really work. So if you're inventing something from scratch, you actually don't want a team of people who know how to do it. You want a team of people who say, sure, we can do that. They don't know any better, right? Because they might come up with something you had never thought of. Right. Exactly. So there's also those balances too. And so when you think about, when you start with your bucket of pay, so the right thing to do is see how much your bucket is, not each position's pay, and what you're attempting to do in the business and what the time frame is, and then start mapping those to teams.
Perfect. Completely agree with you, Patty. So the next question would be, what is the right way to fire people in your organization?
Well, that's another word I'm not happy about. I hate all our military metaphors. I always tell people, nobody's getting a gun. There's no blood, right?
Yes.
So I want to step back and say that when you get to the part where you have to fire somebody, let's step back and figure out how you got there. Okay, if you hired somebody who doesn't have the skills to do the job, they are completely blameless. They didn't do anything wrong. You did, right? You might have just not known. You just might have said, I don't know what we're really trying to do here, but we like you. But we didn't say that, right? And if you make that call, and I've made it before, where I've interviewed somebody, and I remember interviewing a guy on a team, and I'm like, God, I love him. He's adorable, and he's so enthusiastic, and I just want to hang out with him. And everybody else on the interview team is like, yeah, us too. And I'm like, he's not qualified. I'm just saying.
Exactly.
He doesn't have any of the skills we need to do this job. I know, but we like him and we'll help him. And I said, great. So we're going to add another head count to the team that's going to take away 10% of each of your productivity, right? Yes. What's the ROI on that?
Yes.
And I said, but here's the deal. If you guys want to make that call, that makes sense to me, but you have to tell him now, right? You have to tell him before he starts, we're going to take a chance on you. We don't know whether or not it's going to work out, but are you up to trying, right? And so 6 months later, when it didn't work out, which, he didn't know how to do the job, and 6 months later, he still didn't. And everybody else was tired of helping him all the time. And he said, I can't believe you're firing me. I said, whoa, wait a minute. We had this conversation at the beginning, and you took a risk and I took a risk and we took a risk and it didn't work out. And it's okay, right? And just think about the smart people with all the stuff that now that you didn't know 6 months ago, right? So that's great. You got the equivalent of a year's worth of experience in 6 months of working here, but it didn't work out. Okay, so that's thing one. Excellent. In that situation, we should never humiliate, put this person on a performance improvement plan when we knew his performance isn't going to improve. He didn't know how to do it walking in. Okay, that's first example. Second example, the person that is slowly not into it, right? And the manager complains about them all the time, sometimes for years. Right? And then they get up the courage or the nerve or the realization that not only is this person not able to do the job, but they're really unhappy and they're making everybody else unhappy. But they've never said anything, right? This person's always gotten okay performance reviews and they don't really get a lot of attention. And so they get attention by being unhappy, and then we fire them and they're blindsided and they're mad. Or we put them on a 90-day performance improvement plan, which is actually not a performance improvement plan. It's a way to prove that they're incompetent so we can fire them.
Exactly.
How awful is that, right? So by the time you're fired, you're just ashamed. And so, you know, how we can do a lot better at all of that is being honest with people up front and talking about the future in a realistic way, right? Here's what the future looks for you. Are you still, what do you think, right? And when we have these conversations all the time, my 2 rules for termination were: 1, you couldn't be surprised.
Okay.
Think about that. Think if you just did that in your company, what would you do different? A whole lot of stuff, right?
Okay.
You'd come to me and say, you know, Luisa isn't working. I'm mad at her. I'm going to fire her. And I would say to you, okay, Jorge, you wait right here. I'm going to go ask her how she's doing. And you say, well, I did say that to her in our one-on-one in November. Okay. And it's March, right? So like, and I go ask her and I say, hey, how's it going with Jorge? And she says, I don't know, you know, like 6 months ago, he was really mad at me about something. And, you know, he's kind of yelling at me. And then I started crying. And this kind of has happened every 6 months for the last, I don't know, 4 years. So when he does that, I hide. And then it's usually okay for a while.
I agree with that idea, Patty, because at the end of the day, I mean, when we do not tell the people the truth in this case, and they keep them in our organization because it is easier for us to stick with the person that we already know.
Yeah. We
are depriving them to have a great career in other places. So we are selfish.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, and it's like, that's a wonderful way. I'm stealing that from you because I think about, like, you're also depriving the team of having somebody who's excited about being on the team. You're depriving your customer, which is the whole reason why we're here, of having the best people work on something that they're really passionate about to create a great service or product. So, yeah, and the other thing is, honestly, I've been doing this 35 years, and people can hear almost anything if it's true, right? It's when you put that spin on it where I say, you know, Luisa, those communication issues you've been having interdepartmentally over a period of time that we've discussed at length in your performance review once a year, I believe it's time for us to realize that, you know, and the person's like, what is he talking about?
Exactly.
Where you can just tell the truth, right? And people don't necessarily like it, but at least they don't feel like you're lying to them.
Exactly. And we have in Mexico a special term when people go into feedback review. I mean, we call it, I mean, in many places, it's not evaluation review, it's devaluation review.
Yeah. You know, I told somebody the other day, you used the term performance improvement plan, right?
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I said to somebody the other day, I'm like, you know, here, I've got an idea for a feedback structure. What if we had this thing called a performance improvement plan? And it really was that, like a plan to make you perform better? What a great tool that would be.
Yeah.
Too bad we screwed that one up. Because it's a great idea. Like, why don't we put together a plan, see if we're doing it or not, where both of us feel like we're being honest, that that's really what we're trying to do.
Exactly.
I love it. Devaluation plan. I like it. Yeah.
That's what we in many companies call that in Mexico.
You know, I'm seeing on one of the chats here, Fernando asks, sometimes they get fired because their behavior doesn't reach expected goals. I think you've said two things there, Fernando, that are important. One is the goals need to be really clear so that the person knows they're not reaching them.
Okay.
And then the thing is that sometimes their behavior deteriorates because you keep setting them up to fail, right? And so the thing is, as you know, I don't believe in keeping the person who's the brilliant jerk around. But at the same time, when somebody is getting continuously more unhappy, there's a there, right? Exactly. They're unhappy because they don't think they can do it. And that's the other thing to this feedback and firing. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody comes to work every day and says, I'm going to screw my company and I'm going to fail. That's what I'm here for today.
Yes.
I mean, said no one ever.
Exactly. Awesome. Perfect. And the next question that we have is, what are the mistakes that you see over and over again while companies are recruiting?
Usually that they're looking just to check off the boxes on the requisition and not trying to find the person who can do the job. I mean, it's really that simple. It's that there's a wall between the recruiter and the manager, and the recruiter is supposed to throw over qualified resumes, and the manager is supposed to reject or, to be happy or not happy with that, or that we rely on quantity. I gave you 162 resumes, so I did my job. That's really not helpful at all. It'd be much better to give you 6 resumes of amazing people that are qualified so that you can get right to work to the real part of hiring, which is interviewing.
Exactly.
Right. So we get caught up in the metrics of flow and numbers, and that's not, we don't spend enough time thinking about the really successful people that are already in organizations and saying, wow, what is it they do or say? What characteristics do they have that make them really successful here? Right.
Exactly.
And that's why that's a different profile in many different companies, and even in the same company in different teams.
Yes.
There's a team that's, they're always having like passionate arguments because they're trying to find the right solution, and they're debating, these big intellectual debates all the time, and they're all A players and all type A's, right? And that's a really different team than one where people are really detail oriented, very heads down, longer term goals. Right. So you want to make sure that you have enough diversity in the team so there's different ways of doing things, but you also don't want to set up the wrong dynamic so that people can't be successful.
Perfect. Yes. Completely agree with you. So the other question that we have is, what has remained as a challenge for you personally as an HR leader?
Well, now that I coach other HR leaders, I thought I'd see more innovation out there when I left. I really did. What's challenging for me is how many HR leaders I find who do things the way they've always done it and copy each other and call it best practices and have never asked themselves, why? Why, right? I mean,
Exactly.
I have this passion about how ineffective I think the annual performance review is in most companies. And it's the process that we all do, that we all hate. I mean, everybody hates it. Name one HR person that loves administering it, right? Name one payroll person. Nobody, we hate it. Managers hate it, employees hate it. And we don't step back and say, what is this? What is this thing that we shut our company down to do? Is it a feedback mechanism? Is that why we do it? Okay, if we started from scratch and said, let's create a feedback mechanism that's effective, that improves people's performance, you'd never come up with something that happens once a year.
Exactly.
Right? And that's why people are like, oh, it's so hard to give good feedback. I'm like, what else do you do once a year that you're good at? Nothing. Right? So you don't even practice having these difficult conversations, which aren't that difficult when you do it all the time, right? So it's just, that's what's frustrating for me, is that we don't, as a team, as a function, evaluate ourselves critically when we should be doing it. The other thing is, we don't throw anything away. Right? It's always the new global HR initiative, right? And we measure ourselves on consistency. I mean, really, anybody else in the company gets an A grade for doing things the same as they've always done it? Yes. We don't hold ourselves accountable. The other part that I think the number one bit of progress that we can make, like tomorrow afternoon, is to be business people and not people, right? I mean, I cannot tell you how many people, like the conversation I just said, have you ever sat down next to somebody who's doing work that you don't know how to do? You should. So you should also know every one of your competitors and what their competitive advantage and disadvantage is. And you should regularly read the profit and loss statement.
Exactly.
Right. You should know the difference between profit and revenue. You should know the value of retention for your customers. You should know what the average deal size is. You should, I mean, all of those things, because then our job is to say, wow, if that's what we're trying to do, and this is what the competition is, and here's what the time frame is, I think we need to make some tweaks to that team or to that pay.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that especially for you, I mean, in that you live surrounded with technology and all the new stuff coming out every day. And when you see companies like in the HR function that they do the same thing that was made like decades ago and
on paper. You know, I mean, there's some silly stuff. Like I see people that still, you know, enroll in benefits with a big packet of paper in a folder. And I'm like, ew.
Exactly. And in many cases, I see that. I mean, we encourage to HR people, HR leaders to be more involved in the business, because at the end, you make it more tangible for the people that you served. Your initiative.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear a lot from HR people. How do I get a seat at the table? And I say, well, you earn it. Like everybody else, you matter. You when everybody's gathering around a table and says, wow, we have this important business decision to make, you want somebody to go, wait a minute, somebody go get Patty, right? This is going to have an impact on our teams, right? And we want her expertise in the room. And you get that by not getting permission from your CEO to be at the table. You get that by being somebody that everyone respects is going to contribute to that particular business decision. And we all know there is no business decision that doesn't involve the people.
Okay.
But, right? Even
Exactly.
if it's a technical decision, then if you're going to make a technical decision that says, I'm going to switch from this technology to this technology, then you have to make sure that there are people in the company who can do that.
Exactly.
Right? So but if we can't speak about it in those terms, in that language, then we're not going to be heard. Right? Well, you know, I'm not sure that this team's going to feel empowered to achieve those long-range results. And the engagement survey shows that, you know, if they had better flavored water, that they would be more.
Exactly.
Right? Or we say no.
Exactly. Completely agree with you, Patty. I just want to check with you. We're just hitting maybe 55 minutes of the session. So
okay.
We have a lot of pending questions from our audience still. So I would like to know how do you feel with can we have a little bit more time with you so we can answer?
Well, we'll have to figure out the technology better than this, huh? This morning, yes, we can do another 10 minutes or so, if that's okay with you. You want to do that?
Perfect.
My computer's at 34%, so I'll tell you when I start running out of juice here.
Perfect. Okay. For your business perspective, what is the most important factor in the success of Netflix?
The customer.
Okay.
It was you know, you don't know outside of the US about our early business, which was DVDs by mail, because those of you who are international, you all know the product as a streaming product. But it was our obsession with creating a great experience for the viewer, for the customer, that drove all of the positive things that we did. And I didn't, you know, if I interviewed somebody that I thought was more interested in the work of their function than the work of the business, I didn't hire them. So I'll give you an example.
Okay.
And you may have to translate it into Spanish for me, but I would say to my HR team, yes, you're right, we are a service organization, but it is not spelled SERVANTS. We're not servants.
Okay.
Okay, we're not servants to the organization. And by the way, our customers don't work here.
Exactly.
Right? And we are our customers too. Right? So every single interaction you have with an employee is an interaction that says, do we have the right person in the right place doing the best job to serve our customers?
Exactly.
Because that's who we serve, and that's how you teach yourself the business. And the other thing about that perspective and that focus is that I can say some pretty tough stuff to you if you trust me to be saying it on behalf of the goodness of the company and the experience of the customer, right? Which for me at Netflix was huge because, in the early days, I was normal and they weren't.
Exactly.
Because, I remember, okay, I can tell you a great story. At one point when we first started doing streaming, our streaming solution was on the laptop, just like we're doing right now, right?
Okay.
And we had developed our own interface to it, right? And we had 7 different screens that we were testing. And one of them had like all these little dials and gauges on the bottom, and one of them was your buffering speed. And so I said, here's the one that's going to win. We're testing 7 of them. The one that's going to win is forward, pause, reverse. That's it. But people are going to love that. And they're like, well, what about your buffering speed? And I said, okay, look, here's what most normal people think the internet is. Magic.
Exactly. Yes.
And I don't even want to know what buffering is ever, right? I don't want to know. I don't care. I just want to watch my show.
Sure.
Right. And so, I could contribute back to the business, and then people would use me as like, well, go see what Patty thinks. I'd be like, oh, no, this is stupid. or how come it just won't go, right? How come it has to go so slow? And so when we put ourselves in the shoes of our customers, then we're able to contribute to our businesses in ways that make a ton of sense. Right? But we have to be in that business in the shoes of the customer first. Long-winded way of saying customer, 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 customer.
Perfect. I just want to read you some of the comments that people is posting. So, Patty, with Edwin says, Patty, I love your presentation.
Thanks, Edwin. I used to go by the title Diva, but I'm taking it back now. I'm going to be a maven.
Okay. And Nancy says in Spanish, congratulations, Patty, a great woman.
Gracias, Nancy.
Karine asks, Patty, do you offer professional coaching in your sessions?
Right now I'm spending my time doing things like this to promote the book. So I'm not really going inside companies and doing one-on-one coaching right now. I'm trying to get you all to buy the book and think about it. And here's another thing that I want to say really specifically to that question. You can do it. You don't need me, right? Okay. I think we rely way too much on coaches and outside expertise for literally everything we do. Everybody I know out here has an executive coach. It's the new thing. And should I be an executive coach? And I said to them, I'm like, I don't want to be an executive coach. It was a lot more fun being an executive.
Okay.
Right. So you need to look inside yourself and say, how if you can channel me, do that. What would Patty do?
Okay.
And just do it. Right. That's when I read yesterday on LinkedIn. A woman that I did a podcast with did one where she said, hey, I did a podcast with Patty McCord, and she was so powerful that the next day I just went out and I spoke about something that I felt strongly about, and I had an opinion, and I stood up for myself, and it worked. She's like, and you can do it too. And I'm weepy, right? I'm like, that's why I wrote the book.
Exactly.
You don't need me. You need you.
Awesome answer, Patty. So Cora says, be my leader or talk. You're great.
Well, you can join my virtual posse around the world. So You do it.
Perfect. And Eduardo says, congratulations, Patty, Jorge, and Team Arancione. Great conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Fun,
you very much, all guys. I mean, we are 62 minutes away from your presentation. Would you like one more question? Would you like to
do one more? I'm at 25%.
Awesome, perfect. One of the pillars of TMA, which is the philosophy that we follow, the method we follow, it's that people need to work on their strengths and with their own nature instead of trying to change them in aspects that are difficult to show on a constant basis.
Yeah.
What do you think about this approach?
I think it's great. I heard that in your introduction, and I read that when I looked you guys up before I got on the call. I think it's so true. I have fraternal twin daughters, which means that, they literally grew up in exactly the same environment. And I was a very much believer in nurture over nature. Now, my daughters are so different that most people don't know they're sisters, much less twins, right? And their nature, they're just completely different humans, right? And I learned so much from watching them, right? I mean, and when you know your nature and you know what you're good at, over time, right? Like one of the questions I get about people early in their career is, I tell managers, I'm like, why they're acting so immature? Because they're not mature. They don't have any life experience, right?
Exactly.
So you can't ask, you can't expect to have a full-time bartender and for them to not get wasted. You're setting up a situation for people to act immaturely. So, really, right? But as you go through your career, it's as important for you to learn what you don't love to do as what you love to do. So, for example, I am a terrible administrator. I am the worst. When I started consulting on my own, you'd call me and I'd say, "Oh, Jorge, I thought, we were going to talk tomorrow." And you'll say, "It is tomorrow. I'm in New Zealand." I'd be like, "Oh, I'm just terrible at it." But about halfway through my career, I made sure that every time I got a promotion or a new position, the very first person I hired was somebody who was completely not like me. Right? I wanted somebody who woke up in the middle of the night and realized they had put that comma in the wrong place. Right? Or they'd spelled somebody's name, because I don't see this stuff. I'm really terrible at it. But I always wanted to make sure that was the first building block of my team, was somebody who could see the world in a really different way than me. And then we could build from there, right? So that's building the diversity in the team if you start right away. And then the second person I would hire is somebody better than me, right? Because most people don't know this either. You want to be paid more and you're a leader, here's how to get paid more. Hire somebody smarter than you, better than you, who makes more money than you. Okay? Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to get more done. Yes. And you are in charge of the team. And at the end of the year, when you do salary reviews, somebody's going to go, "God, Patty's team is killing it. Oh my God, way more than look at her salary. She's got 3 people that are making more than her. Better give her a big fat raise." That's how it really works.
Exactly.
So that's that on that.
I completely agree with you. We are completely passionate about this, and we also believe.
Yeah, and so it's your personal journey to figure those things out, right? What am I great at? What am I drawn to? What am I proud of, right? You want to think about, so here's the test, right? When you go home at night and you spontaneously tell your partner or your pet, "Wow, today at work was great." Remember what that was.
Exactly.
That's what you love to do. That's what you're great at doing.
We are completely thrilled about this idea, because success is not reserved for just the special ones, just the
That's right.
1 or 2 or 3 or 10 people. Everybody.
The big players. Yeah.
So we're completely passionate about it. So we teach this and we share with the company. So I'm really glad to hear this from you, because it's really encouraging for
Yay. Yay us. Okay,
Awesome.
So let's go out there and do that, everybody, on the podcast, and Great. Thanks for having me so much, Jorge.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome, Patty. So basically, I just want to tell the people, thank you very much for joining us to this event. We have a lot of questions pending. So my suggestion would be that it is impossible to answer all the questions in the depth that you really want. So my suggestion would be to buy Patty's new book, Powerful: Building a Culture of Freedom and Responsibility. I don't know if you can see the book from here, but I would like to close this with these thoughts. So I would like to ask you only 2 questions to our audience. And the main question would be, what are the results that you're currently having right now? And the second one would be, what are the ideal stage that you want to be? Mm. And sometimes when I just ask these questions, many people get me with the answers that says that it is involved with working with someone else. So with so much technology around us, whether are we approaching talent the very same way? How many times have you worked with a recruiting firm to discover that they do exactly the same way as you do? How many times have you crossed your fingers expecting that the person works and be useful to you? Why, in many cases, HR practices are so far behind to the evolution of the world? What if there was a better way to develop, train, hire, and keep people in your organization? What if there was a company that can help you to fix these problems in a completely disruptive manner, and above all, can teach you so you can do it for yourself? Imagine that you have the power to do the power of people. So my suggestion would be to do this. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a green button below, in which when you click it, you will find it to a page in which in the right side, you will find the book of Patty McCord, in which I highly recommend you to buy it, because you will have a lot more depth on these Patty's thoughts. And in the left section, you will find a section in which, in the first square, and we're really interested in your opinion. We really want you to understand what the topics that you want to be instructed in the near future. So we really encourage you to put in that section. When you submit your information, we will give you a very cool gift from you. So I hope that you're going to like it. And in the last section, it would be a section in which we book a free audit strategy session for you and for you. In this strategy session, is completely disruptive, because we understand what is your present situation and what you want to become in the near future. And then you will provide with the strategies and also with ideas so you can implement them and work better with your people. This is not one size fits all approach. It's a custom tailored session. Normally, we don't do this time of sessions, but this time is special. We have Patty McCord here in our event, and we want to share and celebrate this with you. So we're open, although we have a registration that is nearly 1,000 people connected at this time. We want to share, to give them opportunity to the first 20 people. So just to book a meeting, an online session with me. But I have to tell you one important thing. This solution is not for everyone. The solution that we provide it's designed for people who believes in the talent, people who really wants to work in a different way with people. If you are that person, our approach that may be a good fit for you. This option does not represent a big commitment for you. On the contrary, it's a small step, and it's zero risk for you. So I encourage you to sign up for this link. And Patty, I don't know if you want to add something for the event.
No, just thank you so much for having me again. It's great to talk to people from all around the world. Thanks for tuning in.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Patty. Thank you very much for your time, for your effort. Your team is amazing. It has been really helpful to.
Goodbye, Jorge.